Hey everyone, welcome back to Window Seat Studies. I hope you all are doing well. So, we were discussing about cancer biology. In this series, we discussed about the tumors, the different type of tumors, benign tumors as well as malignant tumors. We also discussed about different types of cancers such as carcinoma, sarcoma, myeloma, melanoma, gliomas and astrocytomas, so on and so forth. So, we also discussed about properties of cancer cells, so the certain characteristics that are inhibited by cancer cells. So today we are going to discuss about hallmarks of cancers. So those hallmarks of cancers means there are certain characteristics or the traits that are required by cancer cells to spread, to evade and to proliferate. So they are important for sustenance of the cancer. So they are kind of the traits or characteristics that define them, or they are the set of functional capabilities which are acquired by those normal cells as they make their way from normalcy to the neoplastic growth. So we are going to discuss all of the hallmarks of the cancer in this lecture. So we are going to discuss them one by one in detail. So there are certain hallmarks which we know as core hallmarks. So these are the hallmarks which define cancer. So like if you see those traits in certain cell, they are for sure the cancer cells. So they are for sure the tumor cells. So the core hallmarks are, the very first is sustained proliferation. So those the cells which show sustained proliferation, they are no doubt cancer cells. So those cancer cells, for being for showing the uncontrollable growth, they need to have a continuous and sustained proliferative signal, which is generated by themselves. And so the signal is generated by the tumor cells itself, and that is relayed to the tumor cells. So it is kind of autocrine stimulation that we discussed in the last class. So this sustained proliferative signal is very important because it defines the cancer cells. So you need to have a constant signal for the proliferation. So there are certain genes which are mutated and they provide the sustained proliferative signals so that cancer cells can sustain. This is the very first hallmark of the cancer. The second hallmark is enabling replicative mortality. So we know that the cancer cells are kind of immortal cells. So they need to escape the programmed cell death for being immortal. So they enable certain characteristics which makes them escape the apoptotic pathway. So they become immortal. So this is also a hallmark of the cancer cell. The very important hallmark that we should not forget about is that they activate the invasion and metastasis. So activating invasion and metastasis is also an important characteristic which defines cancer cells. Okay, so invasion means so we know that invasion means when certain cells they can invade the surrounding or neighboring tissues. That's what we call invasion. So they need to have certain metabolic pathways, they need to have certain categories, certain properties such as the encourage independent growth so that they can invade the neighboring tissues, as well as metastasis means that they can form a secondary tumor to a new location. So for, let's say for example, there is a tumor in location 1. So if that tumor is able to invade and go to the second location and then form a secondary tumor there, then we say that that tumor has the property of metastasis, and this property is often seen in malignant tumors. So malignant tumors are invasive while benign tumors are not invasive. So malignant tumors is equal to cancer. So it's a layman way of explaining cancer. So the cancer cells, they are capable of invasion and metastasis unlike normal cells. So this is again a defining characteristic or the trait of the cancer cell. The other core hallmark is accessing the vasculature. So this is also important. We learned about this in the last class, that the cancer cells, they exhibit angiogenesis. Angiogenesis, the phenomena where the new blood vessels are formed, so that then there would be a constant supply of oxygen as well as the nutrients to the growing cells. So this means that angiogenesis is also an hallmark of the cancer cells. So this is for ensuring that cancer cells will have a constant supply of oxygen as well as nutrients so that they can grow. So they are uncontrollably growing cells, so obviously they would need oxygen and nutrients. So this ensures that. Again, the important one is that they resist cell death, so they do not undergo the apoptosis. This is also characteristics of we also discussed this in the property of cancer cells. So this is also a hallmark of cancer cell. There's other very important hallmark that they can evade growth suppressor. So for growth, you need to make sure of two things. First, you should have a sustaining or a continuous proliferating signal, and second, you have to stop the inhibiting signals. So cancer cell do both of the things. So they have the continuous proliferating signal for the continuous uncontrollable growth, and also they evade the growth suppressor. So they inhibit all those inhibitory signals that are going to suppress the growth. So they just block all of the inhibitory in growth inhibiting signals so that they can proliferate. So this is also an important hallmark of cancer. So those are the core hallmarks of the cancer that we discussed here. There are certain hallmarks of cancer which we also call as enabling hallmarks. So those enabling hallmarks are the hallmarks which are kind of supporting hallmarks. So they do not exactly define the cancer cells or the cancer properties, but they are the properties or supporting things that are seen in the cells which are going to cause cancer or which are the cancer cells. So though there are some enabling or supporting hallmarks which do not exactly, like they do not specifically define cancer, but they are important because they are also a trait that is exhibited by cancer cells. So some of them are the genome instability and mutation. So like genome instability doesn't necessarily mean that it is going to cause cancer, right? So there could be a lot of disorder, a lot of syndromes there where you can see genomic instability as well as the mutations. So we cannot say that this defines the cancer, but obviously this is the cause of cancer or the cancer cell. They exhibit genomic instability. So either it is either way around. The genomic instability or mutation can cause cancer, or the cancer cell, they show both of them, the genomic instability or the mutation. So that is why we call them as the supporting hallmarks. Okay. The other supporting hallmark is that tumor promoting inflammation. So the tumor microenvironment, that is also that helps in promoting cancer and the invasion. Okay, so tumor promoting inflammation is not necessarily defining the cancer, but this happens once the cells are transformed to the tumor cells. Okay, once the cells are transformed from the normal cell to the tumor cells, so that is something which comes after the causation of cancer. That is why we can say that this is also a tumor, or the supporting hallmark. Okay, so these are the supporting hallmarks. There are certain hallmarks which we all call as emerging hallmarks of cancer. Okay, so those are also important because they are also the characteristics that are exhibited by cancer cells. But there are a lot of investigation going on about them, and they are very recent hallmarks. So we still need to figure out a lot of things about all those hallmarks or the emerging hallmarks, and that is why we have categorized them differently from the core hallmarks. So this again does not necessarily define cancer, because we first of all we lack the investigation. We have to investigate a lot, and again we have to study and research a lot for clearly stating that those define cancer. So there are emerging hallmarks such as avoiding immune destruction. Okay, so the cancer cells, they avoid the immune destruction. They avoid the immune cells just like the robbers avoid the cops. So their relationship is all obviously the same as the robbers and the cops. The way robbers avoid the cops so that they won't be get caught and they won't be attacked by the cops. In the same way, cancer cells, they evade the immune system. They avoid the immune system so that their immune cells would not destruct the cancer cells. So they undergo. So they how do they do that? Because they follow certain immune checkpoint pathways, and there is some mechanism by which they can avoid the immune cells, and that is again the important hallmark of the cancer. But it doesn't necessarily define cancer, and again we have to investigate a lot how what is the exactly mechanism, how cancer cell they are able to, they are able to avoid the immune cell, they are able to cheat the immune cells. So that we have to investigate. The second emerging hallmark, and which is also quite important, it is deregulating cellular metabolism. So the cancer cells, they do not exhibit the normal cellular energetics. So the normal cellular energetics, that is disrupted, that is deregulated in the cancer cells. For example, the cancer cells, they show the anaerobic glycolysis. So like they have the Warburg effect. Even if they have sorry, aerobic, so they exhibit aerobic glycolysis. Okay, so they do not proceed further with the etc and all. They show they only exhibit the glycolysis. Why? So I'm calling it aerobic because this generally happens in the conditions where there is not enough oxygen. So glycolysis, just like muscle cells, our muscle cells, they opt for anaerobic glycolysis, okay, so by which they can produce the energy, and then the byproduct is lactic acid. So but why cancer cells we have which have apt oxygen, they opt for the aerobic glycolysis. So they do that because the glycolysis is a 10-step pathway, it is a long pathway, so it has a lot of byproducts, and those byproducts are important for certain anabolic pathways. So they do the glycolysis for ensuring that they will have a constant supply of nutrients even if there is no external source of nutrient. So like if even if the nutrients are not being provided by the blood, by the host itself or by the individual, if even if there is no nutrient not available, not enough nutrients available for the cancer cells, they are ensuring that they will have their own supply of nutrients. How? By using the byproducts of glycolysis. And that is why this phenomena, where even when you have enough oxygen, so even even when you have enough oxygen, they show glycolysis. This phenomena is known as Warburg effect. We will discuss about this as well in the upcoming lectures. So this is how so we have to do a lot of research on how the cellular energetics that is disrupted by the cancer cells, how they do not show the normal metabolism. We have to discuss about that. So that is it in today's lecture. So we have discussed all of the hallmarks of cancer in today's lecture. In next lecture, we will discuss about all of those hallmarks one by one in detail. For example, there are certain important hallmarks such as sustained proliferative signals. So how cancer cells manage the constant continuous signal, the continuous proliferative signals. So we will discuss about that. We will also discuss about how they actually invade growth suppressors. So uh, how do they inhibit those inhibitory signals? So we will discuss about all of those hallmarks one by one in detail. Till then, see you. Bye bye.